There was a moment when Claire gave me a call. And I got there and gave you a little message and we got things cleaned up. And our next visit, I said to her, I have a question for you. She said, what is it? Why me? There are so many people that love you that would be here as I did. Why me? She smiled and she said, because you're precious. You're here because you're also precious. There's something about love that is a mystery to all of us unless we don't have it. We can watch a human struggle and we think someone else is going to step up. But you're here today because you're brave and you know you are precious. Let us pray. Almighty God, you judge us with infinite mercy and justice and love everything in the way. We rejoice in your promise of pardon, joy, and peace to all whom you love. In your mercy, turn the darkness to death, and the morning to new life, and the sorrow in parting into the joy in heaven. In Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. This is a reading of the Gospel of Matthew. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. And he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and prosecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way they prosecute the prophets who were before you. I met Claire in 1989. She interviewed me because I wrote this little book. I had to describe to her what it was like to be coming to a place where you know no one that speaks your language. And everyone stare at you because you dress differently like I am today. And wondering who you are and what you're about. And struggling with the English language. And we both sit and cry. Later on, we find ourselves sitting in a waiting room at your hospital because her mother was ill. And in all of these years, we managed to give away the political activities for us, and I'm so up at the county meeting in Chalmers. One day, she doesn't know that I didn't like meeting, so she usually would sew up. So that's what they said. I put her in the car because it was literacy day, and I had food and books, and I took her river to where my friends were. And I made her get out and knock on the doors to have this encounter with different people living in tents. And one day at the stop, we had the books, and the lady said, I can't read. I said, oh, because I can't see, I don't have glasses, so I pull out my glasses and put her, and we got in the car, and Claire laughed. She said, that's interesting. I said, what interesting? You're the person that never could find a class, you know, now you just happen to have one in your head and you gave it away. As many of you know, that there was an interview in the Oregonian years ago that she gave me the title to Mother Teresa of Lincoln County. It wouldn't take too long. There are many people here to share this special time with all of us.
We really don't have a master of ceremonies for this event, so we're going to come up and have a program, and you can see who we are, come up one at a time and share with you. I just want to say first up that just looking around here, a number of people here, people that I, at least for myself, many I had not seen for years, is a real testament to who Claire Hall was and what she stood for. So just take a moment to look around, see who's here. Pretty amazing. I'm going to provide a very personal remembrance for Claire. It's hard, so I'm going to go ahead and use my notes to try to do this as best I can. Claire Elizabeth Hall was my colleague, my friend, and my kindred spirit for nearly 30 years. I arrived in Lincoln County in 1986. By the way, if you don't have a program, I'm going to sorry. So I arrived from Portland in 1986, and Claire followed in 1987. From the beginning, our paths crossed in our respective roles in government and local media. For over 20 years, we worked side by side on projects both big and small, on tasks mundane and life-changing. Through it all, Claire was a vibrant soul whose kindness, wisdom, and compassion not only enriched our workplace, but also our community and state. We have lost a remarkable light in our lives. I'd like to share a side of Claire that embodied much of her character, determination, and fortitude, alongside her humor and humility. For you see, Claire Elizabeth Hall was a fanatic. Yes, I said that. Claire Elizabeth Hall was a fanatic. And it takes one to know. Claire and I discovered early on that we were both passionate baseball fans, in the truest sense of the word. Local teams, go Cubs. College teams, go Beavers, go Ducks. And of course, Major League Baseball. Especially Major League Baseball. The game's history, which mirrored the changes in our country, found meaning in those timeless, classic games. Claire knew that history, probably better than anybody I ever knew. She could rattle off the epic players, the unforgettable teams, and the significance of the game in shaping our national identity. Her memory for great games, great plays, and great moments was almost identical. I shared her passion, and we often talked about it. In fact, I actually remember one time, I told Claire that of all the times I've been in the paper or on the radio, and many of those times it was Claire either writing or recording me, there's only one moment that stuck with me through all these years. It was back in the 1970s when the McMinnville Registered Guard ran an article in the sports section highlighting second baseman Wayne Belmont and his performance in a critical City League game. Okay, it was softball. But Claire understood. She recognized the joy it brought me and the importance of that same experience. Our shared passion for the game grew over time. About 25 years ago, I joined a group of local friends in forming a rotisserie, they now call Fantasy League Baseball, where we gather together, draft imaginary teams based on real players and their statistics, and hold a season together. We started out many years ago in someone's kitchen, but eventually moved to larger venues, spending an entire day drafting, arguing, mapping, and bidding on players. I named my team Belmont Stakes, and that was spelled S-T-E-A-K-S. And that was because I had a penchant for choosing beefy home run hitters to dominate the hitting categories. And I did. Later, some of my players were banned from baseball for steroids. And needless to say, my strategy did not lead to the top of the standings. Years later, I invited Claire to join our league, and she chose the fitting name of McCall Mavericks for her team. McCall for the iconic 1970s governor of Oregon, Tommy McCall, and Mavericks for the legendary independent minor league team from Portland, founded to offer chances to baseball dreamers rejected by Major League Baseball. They were affectionately known as the battered bastards of baseball. And they were the ultimate collection of underdogs who played for love of the game. The team name said it all for Claire. During the annual drafts, Claire would regale us with stories of players and teams from years gone by as though they played just yesterday. Unfortunately, Claire's extensive knowledge of baseball history didn't always translate into a solid prediction of current players' performances, and she finished at the bottom of the league most times. However, toward her final time in the league, we decided to combine our teams for one season. I did the drafting, and Claire provided expert commentary and historical context. Very important. Our team, which we called the Belmont Hall Birders, we decided not to go after the home run hitters at that point. We were pretty good, actually. I remember sending Claire an email one day in late April to announce, yes, our team was in first place. Unfortunately, it was only the third week of the season, and it went downhill from there. Still, every Monday morning that season, we chat about our team, the league, and the excitement of the season ahead. Those are memories I will cherish forever. But Claire's passion for the sport and for its heroes was not limited to our local experiences. She was also a key figure in a nationwide grassroots effort to induct Brooklyn Dodgers and New York Mets legend Gil Hodges into the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. She and others worked tirelessly to gather public support, and she played a pivotal role in organizing the campaign that ultimately convinced the Hall of Fame voting committee to induct Hodges in 2022. He'd been overlooked for over 50 years. Claire prepared and ran the petition campaign that garnered thousands of supporters, and she started a major Facebook group to build momentum for the effort. But what was it about Gil Hodges, among all the players in baseball's long history, that inspired such devotion in Claire? I believe it was shared values in life and leadership that spurred her on. Claire wrote in the petition she drafted the whole thing. Gil Hodges spent 3 years in the Pacific with the U.S. Marines during World War II. earning the Bronze Star for acts of heroism and meritorious service in a combat zone. Like so many of his era, his military service cut short his full potential as a baseball player. Claire, whose father, Carl Hall, was a U.S. Marine, championed veterans' rights throughout her career. Claire's petition also highlighted the qualities that made Hodges worthy of recognition: integrity, sportsmanship, and character. She noted that Gil Hodges, both as a player and a manager, won the universal respect of his teammates, his opponents, and his fans. In fact, there's a great quote that goes around that he was widely regarded as the only player never to have been booed in Brooklyn, New York. His generosity to youth and his leadership in the community stood out. Jackie Robinson even credited teammate Hodges for helping ease his difficult role as the first African American in Major League Baseball. As a manager, Hodges turned the expansion Washington Senators into a competitive team and led those lovable losers, the New York Mets, to an improbable victory in the 1969 World Series, the Miracle Mets. I recognize this. Claire saw in Gil Hodges a man of strong character, a leader who inspired his team to believe in themselves, just as she believed in him. Claire's legacy, her unwavering support for the underdog, her deep integrity, and her fierce determination to champion what was right are qualities we can all honor by striving to live as she did, courageously and with an open heart. Thank you, Claire, for the indelible mark you've left on our lives. You will be deeply missed, but never forgotten. And in the immortal screed uttered at the start of every Major League Baseball game, we say to Claire one final time, "Play on!"
Good morning, good afternoon. I'm so glad to see everybody, and glad you could make it home today. I'm glad we have such a beautiful day to honor Claire. First, I'm going to read a letter from Senator White, and he asked me to read this today. Dear Kelly and Lincoln County community, I write to express my deepest condolences on the sudden and devastating loss of my friend Claire Hall. Earlier this month, her personal courage and public service will be remembered for a long time in Lincoln County and across Oregon. Claire's history of leadership on the Lincoln County Commission and her dedication to expanding access to housing, health care, and services for the homeless will be missed, while also leaving a legacy benefiting generations to come. I also greatly admire Claire's time spent in journalism and her devotion to telling the history of Oregon giant Tom McCall with her work of creative fiction. In a sentence, she was central to her community and a shining example of being authentic to oneself. I hope that her memory will inspire others to stand up for those in need with empathy and compassion, as well as to be true to themselves. Please accept my condolences and let me know if there's any opportunity for me to help. So, like I said, it's so glad to see everybody here. I see a lot of faces that I haven't seen in a long time. I'll express Wayne's words. It is great to see everybody that's sad, see everybody while we're here. I've known Claire for over 20 years as a radio personality, parent, federal elected officials, and colleague on Lincoln County Board of Commissioners. One common theme that was always present with her was her dedication to whatever the task was at hand. In her 22 years as a commissioner, she held many positions on boards, associations, and organizations that work. Many of these positions were with organizations that work to support others, helping underrepresented communities and providing affordable housing and just generally helping others. Taking this taking this into consideration over 20 years of advocacy, the number of lives that she affected cannot be easily counted. And the number that will continue, and that number will continue to be cared, and that number that will continue to be cared for will continue to grow exponentially. Public service is a calling and duty. But most importantly, a privilege. The part of public service that many people don't see is the time and effort it takes to do this job well. The weight of making decisions that directly affect people's lives is one that she did well. She was on the Board of Commissioners in late 2000s when the county and country were dealing with very poor economy. Lincoln County had to make budget and staffing decisions that had repercussions for many years. Being one of the people responsible for doing this with compassion for others while also looking out for the county could not have been easy. But the lessons one learns from this type of experience not only makes you stronger, but also gives you perspective and something to look back on when difficult situations come up again. But I can say that I don't think that any of her experiences could have prepared her for what she went through. I only shared it with her for 6 months, but I saw how she was affected by what was going on. We didn't talk directly about it much, but instead kept it to life experiences and lighthearted banter. She really enjoyed the selfie I took of myself at Vulcan Lake, doing the Vulcan sign in the background. And then we also shared another thing. We also both had met George Takei. Claire's true impact will never be able to be quantified, nor the actual sum of her deeds, because she did these things not for herself, but for others. So, thank you, Claire, for all you have done for the people of Lincoln County and the state of Oregon. I'm sorry that I didn't get the opportunity to serve longer with you on the board. Goodbye and thank you.
Go Tigers, go Seahawks. We're going to get into teams.
I just want to say, for those that don't know, I'm Debbie Kozarges. And I just wanted to say, for those who don't know, this is the trans flag. And Claire loved it.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'm Kristen Newell. I worked with Claire for 17 years as a colleague and as a friend. Debbie and I are going to read a poem. It's entitled Two Kinds of People. It's by Ella Wheeler Wilcox. There are two kinds of people on earth today. Two kinds of people, no more, I say. Not the good or the bad, for it's well understood. The good are half bad, the bad are half good.
Not the happy or sad, for in the swift flying years, bring each man his laughter, each man his tears. Not the rich or the poor, for to count a man's wealth, you must know the state of his conscience and health. Not the humble and proud, for in life's busy span, who puts on vain airs is not counted a man. No, the two kinds of people on earth I mean, are the people who lift, the people who lead. Wherever you go, you'll find the world's masses are ever divided into these two classes. And strangely enough, you'll find two of, there's only one lifter to 20 who lean.
In which class are you? Are you easing the load of the overtaxed lifters who toil down the road? Or are you a leaner who lets others bear? your portion of worry and labor and care. Everyone who knew Claire knew she was a lifter of so many. There's been some talk of her other passions, which are history, baseball, Star Trek. She could beat anyone at a trivia contest. She was an avid reader. She even authored a political novel, imagining an alternate history in which Oregon Governor Tom McCall became president after Richard Nixon.
Claire prioritized others before herself, led with kindness, and created countless services to improve the lives of community members. Her strength, her grace, and compassion left an indelible mark on all who knew her. She will be deeply missed and forever remembered for the kindness she gave so freely and the legacy she leaves in Lincoln County and Oregon. And she forgave everybody that hurt her.
I encourage everybody in memory of Claire to care and go volunteer in your community. She would want you to volunteer at your local shelter or your food bank. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Chantel Estes, and I'm the program manager for Lincoln County Winter Shelter, Community Shelter Resource Center. I had the honor of working alongside Claire through the winter shelter, and I'm extremely grateful to share a few words about how and who she was when she spent it in the shelter. Some people lead by title, but Claire showed up. When the winter shelter opened, she didn't just support it from a distance. She came inside, she stood shoulder to shoulder, she served meals, she listened to the stories, and she remembered their names. She treated every person with dignity. She always called them her people. The ones we house, the ones we keep safe, and the ones who often are invisible. And she truly meant everything she ever said to them. One night, a guest quietly asked the staff, "Are we in trouble? Why is there a commissioner here?" They were nervous, afraid that they had done something wrong. But the simple answer was, she was there for them. And that room changed. She sat down with the guest, waited in line, talked with them, not at them. Later that night, a guest said, "So we're not bad people. If someone like her is here, she must truly care about us." And she truly did. Claire brought dignity in a place where dignity often was stripped away. She brought comfort without judgment. She made people feel seen. On Christmas, she stood in the shelter singing carols with guests, waiting in line, people carrying grief, trauma, loneliness, addiction, and loss. She didn't have to do that, but she did. The photos you've seen of her serving, standing beside guests, those were moments of trust, not photo opportunities. People felt safe with her. She was there simply to be with them. One woman held Claire's hand and said, "No one important ever stands with us like this." Claire smiled and answered, "You are important." That was her gift. She didn't make people feel small. She made people feel seen. Her legacy isn't measured by position or title, but by changed hearts, restored dignity, and people who walked away believing they mattered. Claire didn't just open a winter shelter. She opened hearts, she opened doors, she opened hope. We will carry that forward by showing up, choosing dignity, choosing compassion, and choosing love. Thank you.
I'm Marcy Grace Frederick, Director of Fort Central Oregon Coast Community. I met Claire in 2014, before either her or I transitioned. That was during a community advisory meeting. And 2 years later, we met again because I was supposed she if I needed some help getting my organization going, she would be there to help me with that. And she was, and she put out press release. The rest is just from there, and she touched all people's hearts. And cared about so many. It was extremely difficult to see so late in her last days. And people don't realize how much bullying and trauma that causes to you. My sister. And she really straight every day saying this. And I know that was cruel to us. I know I won't see her face. I know that courage. I told her a couple months before she passed. How much she loved me. And the courage that she gave me every day is in her. The community, and she's gone. I don't know that anybody will be able to fulfill her shoes. That's courageous and strong, and whatever she was.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon, Governor, Congresswoman, Senator, Chairwoman, and to, my goodness, a room full of elected officials and activists and admirers. It's wonderful to see so many of you here today. I think perhaps we should begin by just taking a moment to consider what a beautiful day it is here on Claire's beloved Oregon coast. My wife Susan told me recently that there comes a time in life when it's all about loss. And I'm feeling that loss today. Throughout her political career, Claire championed expanding housing and homelessness services, increasing access to health care, while also responding to the challenges posed by global pandemic and devastating local wildfires. The Oregonian called Claire Hall a pioneering Oregon leader. The Lincoln County Chronicle called her a longtime Lincoln County Commissioner and advocate for unhoused people and affordable housing. Lincoln County said her life was defined by service to her community and the causes she was passionate about. and I called her a friend. As many of you know, Claire Elizabeth Hall was born in Portland in 1959. She earned a master's degree in communications at Pacific University, and soon after she moved to Newport to work for the News Times, followed by 15 years as news director for coastal radio stations. Claire left journalism in 2004 when she won a seat on the county commission. And over the last 21 years, she's been an advocate for people facing homelessness, affordable housing issues, reining in short-term rentals, and health care. She has served on local, state, and national boards for homelessness and housing issues. And according to state data, during that time, Lincoln County has netted over $50 million to build 550 affordable housing units over the past decade. So what does that really mean? Well, among the most notable projects we worked on together were the Wacoma Place, a 44-unit apartment complex in Lincoln City, designed for those displaced by the fires, as well as Surfview Village, a 110-unit townhouse complex in Newport, and another complex in Toledo, setting aside 11 units for veterans experiencing homelessness. In 2023, Claire also helped establish Lincoln County's first ever wintertime shelter, which offers 40 beds, a hot meal, and a safe place to sleep each night during the coldest months of the year. In 2020, she campaigned for re-election for the first time after coming out as transgender, and won her election by more than 2,800 votes. And that success alone will remain a political footnote in Oregon history. Courage, commitment, wide acceptance, recognition, and respect. Those are the things that we know as part of the public record. But what about the personal Claire Hall? Well, as you've already heard today, Claire was a passionate, lifelong Star Trek fan. I often smile at the Facebook photos of her at Trekker conventions in full red uniform, indicating, of course, command. Her favorite was Voyager, and she told me once that she often faced county challenges with the question, what would Captain Janeway do? You've also heard that Claire was a novelist. In 2015, she wrote a fictional piece called McCalllandia, imagining a timeline where her hero, Governor Tom McCall, was selected to be Richard Nixon's vice president and became president when he resigned. There's a few lines in that book. Stress is the fuel of the activist, she wrote, quoting something that Tom McCall actually said in one of his real speeches. This activist loves Oregon more than he loves life. And I know I can't have both for very long. I worked with Claire on many projects over the last 15 years, but most vividly I remember the case of a woman who was losing her apartment as it transitioned to shelter housing. Claire and I visited with her as we worked to find her a new home. The apartment was small, crowded, dark, and dusty, well lived in and well loved. The woman was small and frail, but very proud. She didn't want to move, and she was frightened. Claire and I were lining up options for a new home when we received the news. The woman had been found dead in her apartment in apparent suicide. And we both wept. Claire really did care. It wasn't just a lawn sign slogan. She cared. But beyond that, she lived her own truth and never backed down from a fight. Courage. Claire Hall prioritized others before herself, led with kindness, and created countless services to improve the lives in her community. And we'll miss her dearly. Thank you.
been fighting the cold, I guess it's going to put it in appearance now. Excuse me. For those of you that don't have a program, my name is Doug Hunt, and of the many memories, interactions, experiences I shared with Claire Hall in the 34 years that I knew her, a few come readily to mind. My first memory of meeting Claire was when she was a reporter for the Newport News-Times, and I was appointed to the Lincoln County School Board in 1991. I found Claire to be an accurate, honest, fair, and knowledgeable reporter. In 2012, I was appointed to the County Board of Directors, Board of Commissioners, and worked alongside Claire in her role as a county commissioner for 10 years. It was during this time, and you'll hear more about the baseball in a minute, but it was during this time that I learned Claire attended Pacific University in 1981 in his Bachelor of Arts in Communications. She had taken some political science classes that had been taught by my father, and I was able to locate my father's grade books. And I'm pleased to report that Claire earned A's. And let me tell you, as my father's son, trust me, earning an A was extraordinarily challenging. Many knew Claire was a savant, including when it came to baseball. And I remember I decided to test her knowledge about the 1956 World Series. Okay, so what's so famous about the 1956 World Series? In Game 5, the New York Yankees' Don Larson pitched a perfect game. Now, for those of you that aren't baseball nuts, a perfect game means he faced 27 batters, the absolute minimum, 3 per inning. There were no hits, there were no runs, there were no errors. A perfect game. So I decided I'd better do some homework, and I asked Claire who pitched for the New York Yankees the next day after Don Larson's perfect game. She knew the Yankee pitchers, and without hesitation, correctly named Bob Turley on her second guess. Only took 2, but she knew more. I was convinced she was indeed a savant, which underscored the frequent participation on numerous trivia quiz teams. Finally, I was honored to serve as a county commissioner with Claire for 10 years before my retirement after 2022. I found Claire to be deeply caring, an individual always concerned about others, and one who was actively engaged in improving the lives of the less fortunate. She successfully expanded veteran services, sponsored opening warming shelters in the cold winter, and championed housing for veterans and the homeless. Successful projects include Lacoma Place in Lincoln City, Surfing Village in Newport, Hysteria Gardens in Yachats, and Blackberry Hill in Toledo, to name a few. Claire will be missed. She faced numerous challenges, was a strong voice for causes she held dear. And for our county, she did make a difference, bettering the lives of others.
All right. I am Lano Husing, and I am very pleased to be here. I am the planning director for Lincoln County, but of course, that doesn't matter. Who cares about that? I am here because I am a very dear and long friend
of Claire. So, yesterday, one of my good friends said, "Are you all prepared for today? You got it all worked out?" And what? I'm there. I had it all. I spent a lot of time thinking about what I was going to say today. I had it all broken out. I was ready to go. Then I woke up this morning and I started rereading my outline here, and I suddenly realized what I was going to try to convey to you is how many different roles I've been in and Claire has been in since literally 1989, when I met Claire working in the Oregon Capitol when I was working for the Coastal Caucus, a Sea Grant Fellow. An amazing experience. And we had a tremendous session. Oh my God, we had so many rock stars, and we really had the legislature pretty wired because of the wonderful people we had. And Claire got to be a part of that because she came over as a reporter and interviewed. And there was a flattering article in the News Times, and of course I was happy to see that. And so I was really prepared to explain a bunch of the different things that I had with Claire, and I suddenly realized, I started reading it this morning, and I said, well, God, it sounds like you're writing your own obituary, what that won't do. So in a very pleasant moment, I just started striking out. Well, and I showed her a few people here that are saying, thank God. I was not going to go on. I will be disciplined here. So I really want to make this about Claire. The thing is, I was friends with Claire for so long, but in 2012, I made a very fateful choice to change jobs and come and work for Lincoln County. So Claire, who had been my friend, now is my boss. And great boss, right? And Claire belongs to an era of Oregon elected officials where facts mattered, where you didn't lie, right? And I remember a time in the Oregon legislature, if you lied once, you were done. I don't care if you were a legislator, a lobbyist, anybody. That was integrity. Your word meant everything in that capital. And I don't want to be the grumpy old guy who says it's not like it was when I was there. But I understand from others that are there now, it's not like that anymore. And we know that we face these enormous challenges. So let me spend a minute talking about, we all understand the enormous humanity that Claire represents. So what informed that? But because Claire and I would spend so many hours delighting in each other's company, and she was an outstanding listener. And if you know me, you kind of got to be, right? So I really think I have a good handle on what made Claire Claire. And Claire had two obsessions, historically. Number one, Tom McCall. We already heard that she loved Tom McCall. There's her favorite story that she told me several times, at least, and I loved it. Every time, it was like, tell it to me again. When Claire was young, Claire loved Tom McCall. Some of you may remember that Tom McCall tried to stage a comeback after he had been governor. And he was already sick at that point, and it was not a good thing. And Claire was there standing next to McCall with other young people when McCall really understood the election results were coming in at a campaign event, and this was not going to happen. And Claire said at that moment, McCall stood up, he was a tall guy to get into him, and thrust his fist in the air and said, Oregon, 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 and they all started shouting Oregon. And that is a moment in Claire's life, I know, that sparked something really wonderful, a sense of commitment and a love for the state. So I used to tell Claire stuff about McCall because I spent a lot of time in the Oregon Capitol, and I was like a collector of McCall anecdotes. It was like this amateur historian talking to the old people. Tell me about Tom McCall. And so Tom McCall was not perfect, and I loved sharing some of these anecdotes with Claire, and I love the fact that she didn't care, right? It was almost that it was the truth that mattered, And it was basically even though McCall was a hero, she didn't mind hearing a few unflattering things about what he was really like that I know that came from people directly to McCall. I'm not putting down Tom McCall. I'm extolling the virtues of Claire because she just wanted to know, right? Even her hero, she wanted to understand, and understanding is everything for Claire. The other twin tower in Claire's mind was that we shared with an obsession was Franklin Roosevelt, FDR, right? I'm seeing some smiles. FDR. And I remember when we would, for both of those individuals, there was no anecdote too remote or weird that we weren't delighted to hear. So with the FDR thing, I want to point out that she brought up a number of times to me how much the four freedoms meant for that was an FDR policy statement, a major policy statement. So if this was a political science class, this was a pop test. How many people know what the four freedoms are, Franklin? All right, well, here's what they are. The first one was freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, and that's the hardest one, ladies and gentlemen. I think the Establishment Clause of the United States Constitution, trying to get that right, this country goes down the tubes, it's because we didn't get that right. Freedom from want and freedom from fear. And so it was also, Claire understood that was said in a speech by FDR, and ultimately it animated the creation of the United Nations. I mean, it's really a big deal. If you go to the Roosevelt Memorial in Washington, D.C., you'll see the four freedoms ultimately being featured as the ultimate statement from FDR. So, I'll close by saying this, that when I heard she fell, when she was in the hospital, I went to visit her. And I have this obnoxious habit when I'm around people that I really love and they're in trouble. It's like, I try to be really upbeat and bubbly. I think I'm trying to do it now, right, with my opening. And so I rolled into her hospital room, and obviously she had some serious issues going on, plugged in all these things, and I came in there all chipper and upbeat, and I said, hey, how you doing this week? Let's, hey, you look great, and then like anybody, when I have a legislator or a county commissioner and a captive audience, then like I've got to start talking about stuff I don't want to talk about, right? So I started briefing Claire about our apartment and this and that, and then at a certain point, because she was a good listener, she tolerated me, and then she said, Anna, I said, yes, Claire. Can we talk about the Beatles? And of course. And the Beatles were another shared obsession, right? So when you had people in your lives and you know that you've got this crazy group of things that just matter so much to you, don't neglect that, right? Grab onto that. That person's likely to be the kind of a person that can be a lifelong friend. Not that you agree about everything, but you're at least obsessed about the right stuff. So she said, can we talk about the Beatles? And I said, of course, yes. So, and we did, and I could go on and on about it. I brought up a bunch of stuff about John Lennon and Paul McCartney, and basically I recall saying that I had learned recently that all great art and music, and that the people that do it, they have some kind of an original wound. And I said, what do you mean? And I said, to me, the original wound that Lennon and McCartney shared was they both lost their mothers at a very young age. So in addition to the music and everything else, can you imagine anything more that could have happened to a young person than to lose their mother? Again, both it was a horrible experience, and I'm sure it had everything to do with why they were so close. And so that was a great experience, and I'll stop talking about that, and I'll just say the real closer is, so the real closer to me is when I heard that Claire had passed, and I spoke with her about a week before she died, but it was kind of a shock, and I thought, and Wayne said it, like, Anna, where's your piano, and because a lot of people know I play piano and do vocals at times. And so I was wondering, would I be recruited to potentially do music at this thing? And so I started working up a couple, so Beatles, right? Well, you gotta do Beatles, you know? So I, of course, Let It Be, like on the list, and everybody, you know, knows that well. And then, of course, that wonderful song by John Lennon, In My Life, which is There Are Places I Remember, that song, and a wonderful Bach interlude thrown in there. The achingly beautiful song that John wrote about his departed mother, Julia, half of what I say is meaningless. And so I'm sitting there contemplating, you know, what do these songs really work? And then all of a sudden, because I'm there at my piano, I'm alone in my room playing, and I think a lot of you remember Ouija boards? Remember that weird, like, you sit down at the board and somehow the thing tells you, channels something from another universe or something like that. But the piano, all of a sudden, so I played the one song, and then, like an Ouija board, all of a sudden, like, I'm playing Yellow Submarine. And I go, where the hell did that come from? And what does that have to do with anything? And then I thought about the lyrics, and I realized it had everything to do with Claire. And so, I would love to sing it with you, but when I sang that song, it was the first time I really cried. So, let's remember what the lyrics are. I will speak them rather than sing them. So if anybody wants to start singing, that's all right with me, but please, I won't join. In the town where I was born, there lived a man who sailed the seas, and he told us of his life in the land of submarines. This is my favorite part of the song. So he sailed up to the sun, till we found a sea of green, and we lived beneath the waves in our yellow submarine. And all our friends are all aboard. Many more of them live next door. And the band begins to play. And so, what is that all about? It's all about home. It's all about taking care of each other. It's all about not blaming people for some of the choices that they've made in their lives. I really enjoyed the commentaries about the shelter. That's Claire. That was Claire. So again, I feel extraordinarily privileged to be here. Claire would love to see this crowd. I've been to some of these things in the past, and I've often wondered, people look at me and say, I wonder if I could draw a crowd like this if it was me, right? So thank you very much, and God bless Claire and her legacy. Let's keep it going.
Hi, I'm Jack Kaplan. I'm the mayor of Newport. I'm going to try and keep it brief as I can. It's not my strong point. Our community has benefited for 20 some odd years and far longer than that. I knew Claire as a commissioner from all over the world. They've been tirelessly, amazingly, just on and on in leadership over those years. She's an inspiration to so many folks, to many of us here, for her courage, and to be genuine and to be herself. She stood firm against the kind of political pettiness and attacks that come with being an elected leader. She really just kept going. It's an amazing thing, and in a very humble kind of way. Very little complaining. I'm not always capable of that myself. But she stood firm against the bigotry and the hatefulness that transgender folks can endure. And in that way was such a model for us. And stood up without saying it, you know, but she stood up for so many people. For our transgender folks, for gay folks, for people who are persecuted or just have to deal with expressing their own personal identity and deal with the fear and hostility of folks who seem to think that they have the right to determine other people's identities. I think she was the cover girl for that, who just was who she was. Almost from the get-go of her career as a county commissioner, she led efforts to address homelessness and substance abuse in Lincoln County. I remember at the time that I knew Claire early on, I was the Health and Human Service Director here, and she had this uncanny ability to convene. Claire early on was convened folks, got people in a room to work on homelessness, and this is going back in mid-2005, 2006. I remember walking into a room and just seeing the diversity of folks who she had managed to bring into a room to talk about this, and who actually sat down and tried to solve problems. And that, to me, to be able to bring that kind of thing together is a skill, and that it's somebody that people trust innately, is to show up at a meeting, because all of us, most of us here are pretty good at going to a lot of meetings. But she actually got people who want to come. And that was so important. Something nobody has mentioned here was that in those early times, Claire was the force behind our first drug court in Lincoln County. Which led to specialty courts that had not been here previously, which were critical. And in the same way, at that time, she managed to convene, there were about 4 or 5 different substance abuse treating agencies who were competitive, managed to get them in a room and figure out with them how they were all going to be able to work and be part of this system to deal with folks who had substance abuse, but to work together cooperatively. An amazing skill. So I just knew her as someone who worked very, very hard. I didn't have a close personal relationship with Claire, but I don't know how many rooms I've walked into and said, God, she's cheering this one too. She did. Maybe everybody else took a step back, but she just did that. And she was just someone who worked very hard to understand issues, understand problems, and was devoted to coming to the best solutions possible. She was kind, she was gentle, and she was fierce. She selflessly gave of herself in service of us, and her impact on this community will be felt for many years to come. She's truly an inspiration to me and to many others. I'm a better person for having known her, and I will miss her. Thank you.
Hi, I'm not Monica Kirk. She's not here, so I'm pinching. Doubtful. Claire was a good friend, and my mother's Irish, and in the Irish tradition, she always used to say, like, well, really, is a funerals and wakes. And she would say, you know, you can tell what kind of life a person lived by how many people come to their funeral. There is no greater sin than having 3 people at your funeral. Right? And what we have to remember is that for every single person here, there were hundreds of others whose lives were touched by Claire, by her kindness. She met everyone that she met and saw them as they were. And it didn't matter, from the most important person to the person that was on the street, she met them with an open heart. And she lived her true self, and by doing that, she was a trailblazer. She broke barriers, and she made it easier for so many other people to live as their true selves. Yes, in the trans community, and that was important. But also for the rest of us to show up even in difficult times. And these are difficult times. And what Claire did was showed up with that open heart. Even when she was facing bullying and cruelty and anger, she could have closed up her heart. She could have done what so many politicians do and made it about herself and kept herself away from the people. But she would not do that. And that caused her great pain, but it also was a gift to all of us and to her, because she was not going to back down. What Claire taught me is that in times like these, when there's so much fear and there's so much hatred and there's so much anger and there's so much divisiveness, you don't have to show up with your fists up all the time. This is a lesson I really try and learn every single day. Not always. But she showed me by living it that kindness is not weakness. That kindness is not weakness. That kindness and love is a strength. She was not a show horse, although when she walked into a room, everyone knew she was there. She had us laughing, and there were sparkles. But she was the workhorse, the one who got things done, the one who said, if this needs to happen, I'll show up and roll up my sleeves and work alongside anybody. She didn't just talk about things, she made a difference in all of our lives in this community that she loved so dearly. So the way I will honor her life is to try and meet this moment with an open heart like she did. Showing that kindness, showing that understanding, meeting people where they are, and not backing down for the things that really matter. And what mattered to Claire was this community. And we've all lost a dear friend, and I think there is not one of us that could do the work that she did, so it's going to take all of us to pitch in to make sure that her legacy is that we continue upon the path that she paved.
Why did I have to follow Val? Well, coming from the tribe, we were always welcomed by the community or the politicians, the county commissioners, the governor in our history. And so back in the day when I first met Claire, she was a housing advocate then and an advocate for healthcare, and we all had the same purpose. And as I listened to all the speakers, I've been to a few funerals. It always amazes me that we can't say all of these nice things to the people when they're alive, when they're sitting in front of us, and when we can honor them with a gift or just a thank you, something that makes us feel better and makes them feel better. We always wait until they're gone to tell them what we really think of them. So I really appreciate the warmth and the feeling that Claire gave us, working with county commissioners. We have a great relationship, working with the governor's office, working with local mayors and everyone. She's kind of led the way. And when we asked for a meeting with the county, she was the first one to jump right in and talk about the issues that we had that were common issues for both of us. She was a very kind person, and I think everyone has said that. And she was patient, and she was a great leader. It was something that we all could benefit from. And I liked your comment, Val, about it's hard to have an ugly feeling about what we do when bad things happen, and that doesn't work.
And so I appreciate those words. But with regards to Claire, she was responsive. She was a real warrior for this community and for the state of Oregon. I watched her on TV when she was, I think it was a presentation before the House of Representatives. And we will miss her. We always enjoyed her laugh. She would have lunch with us every now and then and dinner at times, but she saw what needed to be done in the county with regards to housing and with regards to health care. And she was a real warrior in the community, and we will miss her. And our prayers are with her family and her friends, and I never heard much about her family, but I heard a lot about her friends, because she always talked about the friendships that she had and the things that she loved. So thank you all.
Good afternoon. I'm Sandy Williger, and I met Claire in the late 1980s when I worked for Oregon Coast Community College as an instructor and as an administrator. At that time, Claire worked for the Newport News Times as a reporter. As a reporter, she always attended the college board meetings, and she asked questions of me and of the board members. But she asked in a conversational manner. There was no gotcha phrasing of questions, but questions asked for information. She did her homework. Her demeanor and openness. Claire was the age of my older daughter, but our age difference made no difference. She was a trustworthy friend and one who would answer truthfully my questions, whether I would agree or not with the answer. Claire's tenure as Lincoln County Commissioner was during the time I entered Newport City politics, first as a city councilor and then as mayor. We both loved local government, and we had great lunches and conversations about our role as public servants. I felt free to ask her any question, and it was reciprocal. Trust and truth I could count on. She had the ability to give bad news in such a way that it wasn't devastating. Things could be worked out. A true problem solver. I felt honored when Claire called me to let me know that she had made the decision to become Claire. Claire enriched my life as she did in everyone she touched. She was kind, hopeful. She listened to people, was dang smart, loved history, especially Lincoln County and Oregon history, and of course, Star Trek. Sure. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gabriel Schechter, the bonus speaker on the program. Like a lot of Claire's good friends who can't be here today, I met her through baseball pages on Facebook about 15 years ago when I was working at the Baseball Hall of Fame. I moved back to Oregon 8 years ago and actually met her the very week that she had begun her transition. We became close friends, and I can tell you, since the pandemic, we talk every day on the phone for 20 or 30 minutes. We became very close. I want to tell you that she brought the same compassion and idealism to baseball that she did everything else in her life. And she turned her compassion mainly on Brooklyn and the people in Brooklyn who were devastated when the Dodgers left for Los Angeles in 1957, 2 years before Claire was born. One thing she did was to write a novel for baseball equivalent of Hollandia, alternate history in which the Dodgers stayed in Brooklyn forever. Wait till I tell you the hero of the novel. The president of the Brooklyn Dodgers who does everything that it takes to keep the Dodgers in Brooklyn. You ready for this? John F. Kennedy. The other thing she did was befriend several of the Brooklyn Dodgers. Became good friends with Carl Erskine, who died just a few years ago. And also became friends of the family of Gil Hodges. I want to thank Wayne for giving me the history of Gil Hodges, saved me a couple of minutes. She became friends with Gil Hodges' widow, and especially with his daughter, Irene. Wayne did mention that Gil Hodges died at the age of 47, very young. And the campaign to make him a Hall of Fame lasted for decades. And Claire, his widow, lived just long enough to see him inducted. Irene Hodges did a podcast a few days after Claire died with a mutual friend. And one thing she said is very relevant today. She said, Claire loved everything that she did for people. And that really sums her up in one sentence. Irene met Claire once. We were just from corresponding, and she got right to the heart of Claire's character, and it makes me realize how much luckier all of us are who knew Claire for a longer time, and knew more of her, and knew her better, and had her presence in our lives, such a strong presence. That's what I came prepared to say. I want to add one thought. Turns out Claire was sort of the reason I came back to Oregon. I'm from the East. I went to grad school in Eugene 50 years ago. Spent 2 years there, fell in love with Oregon, the beauty of the place, but more than that, the people, just something about the people. And when my wife died 10 years ago, I had to decide where I wanted to be. I had lived in 6 or 7 states. I decided to come back to Oregon. And it was absolutely the right thing to do. Because of the people here, and what I'm going to say covers a lot, I hope all of you, I think so. The beautiful thing about Oregon is the innate attitude of its people. The natives, but also the people who have come here. And it's pretty simple in my mind. We're in Oregon. We have a lot to celebrate here. If we look out for each other and don't mess with each other, it will be that much better. And that's the truth about Oregon, and Claire embodies more than anybody I know. And let's just keep her inspiration in our hearts always. Thank you.
Excuse my interruption, I'm not on the program either, but I'm a friend of Claire's, just for a short time, and we moved here 2 years ago. But she touched my heart, and she showed me love. And when I heard there was going to be a recall, I said, oh no, that won't do. So I talked to my neighbor,
who has gotten me some of these things before and asked him to get me this. And I would fly this from my car through town. And Claire loved it. I'd like to present this to her niece Helen.
Can everybody hear me okay? Hey everybody, I'm Tim Libb. I'm here on behalf of Katie Jacobson, so I apologize for the poor substitute. She sent her well, couldn't be here. I worked with Claire pretty much every day, every weekday, for about 2.5 years, and I knew her as a reporter, actually for a job that she had held about 2 decades before, working for Newport News Times, for about the same amount of time. So I've known her for about 5 years, and she was my friend. Yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit emotional during this, but my remarks are gonna be short. I don't think I actually met her until April of 2022, 2 years after I got here, right at the beginning of the pandemic, because of the shutdowns. I think the first in-person meeting the board of commissioners had since then, and it was really contentious. And Claire was really brave and decisive. And she was chairing the meeting, and she recruited her gavel to a bunch to keep people from clapping. I don't want to get into the details of the meeting. Some people may remember it. Just looking over at our friends in the office. I remember learning, it was actually a little while after I got married, I've been writing stories about her, that Claire was a transgender woman, and being so impressed by that bravery. I mean, a lot of you probably read the story in the Oregonian, and that she did that to give courage to so many people like her. And I think I did. I think we probably did. And then I remember being so impressed with this community when she was reelected in 2020, resoundingly. She was, as the recent Oregonian article called her in its headline, a pioneering leader. Claire cared deeply for and dedicated her life to vulnerable people, unhoused, low-income residents, people involved in the criminal justice system, people in recovery, survivors of the wildfire. We all bore witness to her campaign tagline, Claire Cares. She was also obsessed with books and with learning. She loved those esoteric historical anecdotes, especially about her adopted coastal home. So, I can think of few better ways to honor her memory than empowering the pursuit of knowledge in local youth. The Claire Hall Memorial Scholarship, hosted by the Lincoln County Foundation, will be awarded to graduating high school seniors chosen based on their heart for the community and their demonstrated spirit of inclusion, values that Claire lived. I've got this box of envelopes that you can all put checks in. They're all already addressed for you. You can also look on the back of your program and the address to send your checks to, and put Claire Hall Memorial Scholarship in the memo line. You can find that there. Thanks for taking me a little space to speak about my
wonderful to have someone here to assist the short people. Claire and I met 38 years ago at the first meeting of a single script at First Presbyterian Church in New York. Claire came to the meeting with her co-worker Tim Solvay, both were working at the News Times. After a couple of weeks, Claire and Tim invited me to come hang out with them. As I arrived, I could hear Paul McCartney from inside. When Claire opened the door, I said, "They're listening to McCartney." Claire said, "Yes, do you like Paul?" "Yes," I said. "Do you like the Beatles?" Claire and Tim both said, "Yeah." Instantly, we became the three amigos. And I soon learned that, among other things, Claire was obsessed with the three Bs. The Beatles, baseball, and Bugs Bunny. We three went to movies and concerts, including Paul McCartney, and often ate together. A highlight of these events was Claire's sharp, ever-ready wit. One night we had dinner at a pizza place. The older gentleman who took our order was an acquaintance of mine. He brought the pizza to our table, pulled up a chair, and regaled us with stories throughout our meal. Afterwards, Claire, Tim, and I got in the car and just stared at each other. Finally, Claire said, "I'd like a large pepperoni to hold the conversation." It's always like that. After Tim moved away, it was just Claire and me. I applied for a part-time typist job at the News Times. Claire recommended me for the job, which I got. I was never any good in college, but I'd always kind of wanted to be a reporter. I saw my chance. Claire lent me her journalism textbooks from when she got her master's at Northwestern. I read all the textbooks except the parts about sports reporting. In the evenings, I go to work the next day and apply what I'd learned the previous night. Before long, I was offered a full-time job writing business stories in addition to typing. After I moved away, I got a job at the Corvallis Gazette-Times. I owe my 18-year news career to Claire's support. I like to think the support went both ways. Once she asked me what I would think about her running for county commissioner, I reminded her that once I had told her I thought she would be great in public office. I asked how much it paid in relation to her current job at a radio station. I was shocked. She was making less money than I was. I said, "Why are we even having this conversation? Go file to run for county commissioner." And we all know how well she did in that position. We stayed in touch over the years. One day she asked me to go see a movie with her in Corvallis. She picked me up, then pulled over in a couple of blocks and did her big read. She would henceforth be living as Claire. I was surprised, but immediately started to accept this change. She began babbling excitedly, then said, "Isn't there a Ross Dress for Less around here?" We ditched the movie and drove to Ross. Claire recently reminded me that on our way into the store, I grabbed her hand and said, "Yay, I have a new shopping buddy." A few visits later, Claire asked me if I noticed anything different about her, besides her appearance. I thought for a moment and said, "Yes, you seem much more present. You used to seem preoccupied all the time." She smiled and nodded. "Right," she said. "I was always thinking about hiding my truth." I'm so grateful she got to live the life she was meant to lead, even if it was her only a few years. Last fall, Claire spent some time in the hospital. I visited her there 4 times. The last time was the best. She was feeling better and was quite animated. We talked and laughed for 2 hours. It was the last time I would see her. On the phone a couple months ago, Claire told me she planned to write her memoir this year. Though we'll never get to read it, we can still read Nicole Landry. Claire loved the saying, "She flies with her own wings," which is Oregon's state motto. Claire saw that motto many times on the masthead of the Oregon Journal, which she started reading when she was about 10. After Claire made her transition, I found a pin with this saying and bought it for her. She wore it proudly. Some years back, I attended the memorial service for Claire's mother, Jane Hall. Claire gave a wonderful eulogy, speaking of the years her mother lived with her in Newport. Claire recalled how she would say to her mother each night, "Good night, Mom, I'll see you in the morning." She repeated this phrase as the conclusion of Jane Hall's eulogy. And so I say today, good night, Claire. We will see you in the morning. And all of these words bring us great sorrow in the future. One day another master says, he said, I need to see you. And this will take a little time before I want to see you before you see it in news. Okay, so I made lunch and he go to my house and he's eating lunch, so he can eat in here with me. And I thought, oh boy, this is some healthy stuff. She came to tell me about the sister that she was going through. And I said, wow, that's a relief. She smiled and said, what were you thinking? Well, I was thinking maybe you're quitting your job and you may ask me to run for the commission. But that was the kind of friendship that I had with her. Claire was always there. So I wrote this little poem a few days before the crisis. And it went like this. Everywhere in the street there are signs that said, Claire, don't kill. I want you to remember and to know, Claire, you were always there. No matter how bad I was and how deep I could disagree with you, you were always there. I always see you in the corner of my eyes. And the day was broken because my husband was lost. You were there in the corner of my eyes. And the time when I called the community to come to bless the place that I'm working at, and I didn't like you. You were there. I saw you in the corner of my eyes. I want you to know that you have made a difference in my life. And you smiled. The last few months I visited so often, and I got to know how much her staff loved her. Her friends dedicated to her. She worked every minute of the day. I wanted to take her computer and her phone and throw it. I had to stop that, and I would drop her feet, and she is still working. I want all of us here to know that Claire is always there. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming around the mountain. She'll be coming around the mountain. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. She'll be coming around the mountain when she comes. that our fears dispel, our loneliness and ease, and hope be awakened. May your Holy Spirit lift us above our natural sorrows with the peace and light of your constant love. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Let us go out to love one another, to care for each other, and hold each other in peace.